Welcome to the 1878 FM podcast. It is episode 7. We have got a full complement again this week. The Bushmaster General failed a late fitness test last week. Luckily for us, it was only a slight discomfort in the back. He's had treatment and he's back amongst us today. So, Mr. Bush, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've just my back still hurts. Sorry to be off last week, but I bought some CBD oil for my back.
Ooh,
does that make me like a stoner? Do I have to start wearing a take you to
No,
dealer
it's all street legal these days.
Yeah,
Is it?
I've got
right
some,
now.
yeah.
You know,
I might start wearing tie-dye or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
you could. I think you could carry that off.
Thanks, guys.
That feels like a generalisation, doesn't it? Tie-dye, you know. Not sure the kids in Liverpool are wearing tie-dye who take CBD oil or other versions of it.
Other versions of it that probably
other versions of it.
CBD.
It's a strange one that it seems like it's come from nowhere, doesn't it? And like it's always been legal, and it's you know, and now you can get gummies and people, they give them out on planes, don't they?
Do they?
Apparently to calm you down. They don't give them to the pilot.
I just think it's really strange. You've got something that was at one point in recent history kind of seemingly contraband and not socially acceptable, and now they sell it in Holland and Barrett.
That's progress, Dave. It's progress.
What is more, nothing says socially acceptable now than
Holland and Barrett.
And exactly. 4 times the price of normal. Other stores are available, I'm quite sure. Holland and Barrett's retail prices are competitive.
When we were in Washington, they had the real deal was legal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and
it was.
And surely they can make a version of it that doesn't stink.
That's the one.
Because the whole of Washington just stunk of weed.
Yeah. It should be like strawberry flavoured or something.
Like vapes.
Like vapes.
Yeah.
They must be able to put, but then again, that's going against, I suppose, the natural elements of it, isn't it?
There's now worse though being on a train. Someone gets on who's obviously had a bit of it, and it just stinks, doesn't it?
It's
I can't lift my handbag like Vic Reeves on Shooting Stars whenever that happens.
When I worked on as a taxi driver, people would get into the car just reeking of it, just on their clothes and everything. And it was just hot. And then your car would stink, and then people would get in and give you a little bit of side eye, as in, like, what have you been up to? And it was horrible.
See, the problem?
Horrible. And they didn't wash either, so these smells of weed and feet. That's how I describe large areas of deprived areas in Liverpool of just smelling like weed and feet.
The problem is, as well, is that it does stink. It's disgusting, isn't it? But you don't even get any benefits of that. It's not as if, like, they're getting in your taxi and they stink, but you're getting a little bit of, a little bit mellow here. This is all
I don't think that's the best way to feel in a 12-hour shift.
No, but just taking the edge off, rather like CBD does. CBD doesn't make you, not.
I don't know. I've not had any.
I've had some CBD.
I must admit, I haven't tried it yet.
It's nice. It just chills.
Maybe next episode we could all drop a gummy.
Shall we? I've genuinely, I've got some downstairs. I got sent like a free packet, but I've never tried it. Maybe next week is when we should try it.
Just try it as Ped's air frying. What about that?
Yes, we should do air frying on
CBD. Can you air fry CBD?
I'm not gonna put my air fryer through that.
No, but you could make us a snack with CBD.
Get the munchies towards the end.
No, it doesn't have the. It doesn't have the drug in it.
I mean, I've seen the Hairy Bikers do an episode where they were in California, and actually they went to a restaurant that specialized entirely in edible marijuana, for want of a better thing, and they had gear and all sorts of stuff, So maybe the air frying of the CBD capsules is the way forward.
Maybe that's the way forward.
That could be
go back to the very first episode, Dave. What about a marijuana pasty?
Absolutely. I could do you a CBD toasty if you want. In my George Foreman lean grilling machine.
Nah, that's old hat. We could open a cafe called Amsterdam Air Fryer and just see what happens. Just run with it.
Just go with it. Run with it.
Literally kitchen fire every week due to not being on the ball.
Due to not being full.
Sorry.
That was the only time I've ever had any kind of experience of this world, actually, because my sister used to live in Amsterdam, and so it was like an easy, cheap weekend away. And I went over with my missus at the time, and my sister took us to some coffee shop and gave us some stuff which was perfectly legal over there, which was perfectly not legal where we live. And it was like every stereotype. It's the first and only time in my life where it's actually kind of gone well or right, in so much as I just spent an hour walking around Amsterdam, just giggling and eating individual slices of pizza and burgers and just general munchy stuff, and then nearly got run over by a trolley bus.
I'll be honest, I've been to Amsterdam twice and I haven't had any kind of substance, and those things all happen to me as well. So you know,
there you go. There you go. With
Interesting.
or without substance.
what a place.
Right, let's move on to foot. We will come back to
I don't want to move on.
I don't really, but let's skate over it
Let's
very
go
quickly.
straight to the red light district and forget about football.
CBD and the red light district with munchies. And that's a better podcast, I think, today. But let's quickly skate over Saturday night. Dave, we discussed last week that it was going to be a tough game. Remembering and shivering at the thought of the 5-0 only a few months ago there. And Everton ultimately didn't lose 5-0, which was good. There was some slight improvements, but it was still a case of rope-a-dope, which we discussed the other week, really. They kind of drew us in and kept us at arm's length and comfortably won the game in the end.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we said last week that I didn't fancy us at the weekend, and actually Everton didn't disappoint in that respect. However, I have to say that it goes down for me to be all about those first two chances that were not put away. The Damari Gray one, which does, to be fair to him, clearly bobble up before he strikes the ball, and that's why he skies it. The Onana one, he should have got it between the sticks, definitely, one way or the other. And I think that if one of those two go in, it's a different situation, but they didn't. And the age-old thing with Everton have rued the chances, and they did very much. But I mean, listen, on the balance of the 90 minutes, Spurs were the better side. We knew that they would be beforehand, and they were. And I don't think we can have any complaints, to be honest with you.
Andy?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The one thing that I was impressed with, though, if you're looking for these kind of small little nuggets as we type of recover as a football team, which I think what we're doing, this is a season of kind of recovery, is that once the second one went in, because it was the typical Everton pattern, wasn't it? Bit of dominance, miss a couple of sitters, you can see it's coming. Spurs are the masters of the dark arts of sitting back and drawing you onto. You know how the second half was going to go. Yeah. It wasn't a penalty, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I didn't think it was either.
Slipped on his Brill cream.
Yeah.
And then it was just a mistake. It was a Tarkowski mistake for the second as well. But the key thing for me was that we just didn't collapse then. Which last season we'd have collapsed and it had been 4, 5, whatever. And they don't. I feel like they have more resilience to them and kind of not stayed in the game, but we kind of weirdly had almost a kind of composed finish. So I know we didn't get anywhere near them in the second half, but we didn't absolutely all start arguing with each other and give up, which is what an Everton team last season would have done. So I think you can take some positives out of it. We definitely, as Dave said, were soundly beaten, but I think in these little steps towards being a better Everton, I feel like there is some positives to gain from it a little bit.
Ped, you've got to score them, or if the targets have.
Yeah, I disagree with Dave. I think Damari Gray's is woeful. Like I don't care if it's a bobble or not. I think that's woeful.
It does bobble up though.
It does, but he's a professional footballer. Come on, maybe for me and you, Dave, that would have been different. But as a professional footballer, I expect him to do a lot better.
You should have said earlier.
Fair point.
I know Onana's the same as well. The two players not really in fully control of the situation, and that's where Everton have got to improve. And it's saying what Andy said there. It's a case of it's little small steps that you can see, but it doesn't half make it frustrating when you actually do get opportunities. And there are, like we've said this a million times, you see other teams get results in games where they take those chances.
Yeah,
teams have been to Anfield and teams have been to Old Trafford and the Emirates and the Etihad, and they take those chances and it's dead easy to go, well, if we'd scored, they would have come back, but you never know. You've got to take your chances, haven't you? Yeah. And to have no shots on target, I think is abysmal. Yeah. And as for
one on target in the last 2 games.
Yeah, as for well as we played in terms of stopping Spurs doing what they do, that's abysmal. That's like, and I know it is a massive improvement, but having no shot on target is an improvement for me. No. And that's where the forwards have got to get better. And that's where I think Frank Lampard's got to get better. He's got to have something else than just sit back and soak up pressure. That's great. Do you know what? The best teams in the world did that. Conte's done that for years. Mourinho's done that for years. But you can't do anything if you don't have something at the other end. Yeah. And that's what we're really struggling at the moment.
If we had I'll just use Lukaku as just an example because he's an Everton striker who has been prolific in the last 10 years. Someone like him, and you're thinking, we're going to draw you in because we're comfortable at defending. But when we actually counter-attack, we've got a lad who can stick it in the net.
And I think as well, because we don't have that, when those chances do come along, and they're not going to come along very often, as you say, in both the case of Gray and Onana, you've got to be doing something properly with it, because it's not like, oh, we've gone and screwed those up, but there'll be another 6 along, in the second half. It doesn't work like that.
Is there and Andy did make the point, and I think he's right, actually, is that this season, do we just have to accept that this is almost, and when I say rebuilding, because there is a rebuild, there's totally different players in the team, but rebuilding, like Andy said, I guess the confidence and rebuilding Everton as a team is that there are going to be these moments, I think, this season where we lose 3 games on the run. I think it's going to happen. I've got to try to eradicate that. It can't happen regularly.
It's going to happen this week, isn't it, I think?
Well, we'll see. Well, it's up to us to make sure it doesn't. But the thing about it is, we might have to go through this pain this season as long as we stay, as long as we're not in any kind of trouble. And the manager's done a press conference today and alluded to this as well, is that like this season is about almost creating the foundations for next season. But we still need results with that, don't we?
I was going to say, it's great saying we're going to build foundations and everything, but you actually have to win points. You have to score goals. If you don't do that side of things, you won't be in the league. Yeah. And I genuinely mean that. It's great being able to say we're a lot better defensive, but if we can't put the ball in the back of the net, then we're going to really struggle. And the player...
Saturday was only the second time he hadn't scored.
No, I know, but how many goals have we scored this season?
8.
8. That's woeful.
No,
and I am one person I am someone who doesn't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's coming back. I really don't. I don't think Dominic Calvert-Lewin's ever coming back as anywhere near that player.
But does this not then put us back to, and sorry to kind of keep harping on about it, but the conversation that we had in terms of the inability to get that other striker in addition to Neil Maupay, who isn't really a prolific striker anyway, right? And we didn't do that, and now we find ourselves in this problem, because I'm with you, Ped, is I don't think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is ever coming back to being anywhere near what we thought he could potentially be.
See, I mean, it makes me sad to say that about Dom, but I just don't think, when I hear things like the manager say, we've got to be very careful and how he's not training all the time, I just think, what's going on? What is going on with him? And if there's other issues bar football, that's fine, but that's why I don't think he's ever going to come back. And I think you're absolutely right, Dave. Maupay is nowhere near good enough for Everton to be playing on his own. He's just not. That's a fact. He's good enough to play maybe a split striker, and I think that's where
not a lone striker.
I think that's where they got the recruitments wrong. And we said this on deadline day, so it's nothing new. On deadline day, we sat here and we watched the clock tick by, and we were like, we're missing a player, and we've got to be. That makes it doubly hard, and we've seen that on Saturday. But listen, there's a lot of other points out there. You've got to play. You've played 13 other teams twice. There's a lot of points to take, and I think Everton just got to grow. But saying, when Dave said there about maybe three losses in a row, Newcastle actually is a place where we've got to go and sort of puff out our chest a little bit. Gotcha. So and those games like Palace coming up and Leicester and Fulham, we've got to go in those games and really have a go. And that, I suppose, it's not added pressure, I suppose, but that's what got to happen.
Yeah, Andy.
But I think this is probably going to be the game plan. I think this season is going to be try and stay within touching distance and not get humiliated against the bigger teams and pick off but not expect to win. Yeah. But then try and put away teams like, no offense to like Palace or Fulham or Leicester or whatever. I think he's going to have to just like suck it up against, like you say, against Man United, Tottenham. Even though we were kind of in the game, lose them, but then try and make sure we beat the teams that are a bit more, sadly, at our level or below, and that's where it's going to be. Because I don't really see us turning over any of the top 6 really at all in a million years.
I think we lose tomorrow night, and I think Saturday then becomes a massive game, because that will be 3 on the bounce, and Saturday has to be a hard-fought reset against Palace to then set us up for Fulham away. Yeah, and then Leicester with a bit of momentum will do them as well. That's what I feel.
Yeah, and
I do worry though, because I'm sorry, I'm going to the game, the Palace game on Saturday.
Well, that's you bloody jinxed it now.
No, but it's my dad. My dad is an albatross. My dad's a terrible footballing albatross. Obviously, he's a lifelong Evertonian. He got me into Everton when I was a kid and everything. But he's coming with me as well, and I am concerned. I don't know if anyone who listens to this podcast knows any like shaman or people who do kind of cleansing,
Ebenezer Good
or something like that. Just like it's holy water or something.
CBD oil.
The CBD oil. CBD oil.
That's what we need.
Give it to your dad and knock him out.
Coming to the Premier night, I believe. Cleanses it. That's what I've heard.
Can you imagine?
Friday night, bring your dad.
Dosing your dad up like Mr. T before he goes in.
It'd be like, do you remember when Jim Robinson ate magic mushrooms on Neighbours? Early episode of Neighbours. Jim Robinson and Doug Willis.
Doug Willis, what a
magic mushrooms.
fella.
It'd be like that.
Yeah.
Be the fellow with the ute.
Doug Willis.
I think Doug had a ute. Yeah.
Everyone had a ute.
Yeah, Doug was the man.
Jim Robinson ended up having a fantastic film career.
He did.
He ended up being in all kinds.
In America, he was
in the
big
Avengers.
star in
He
America.
was in 24.
Yeah, he was
in 24. He had a fantastic movie career in the end.
Brilliant.
Fair play to him.
I'll tell you something really weird. My brother Simon had a VHS cassette with. He would record all the neighbours' deaths on it. It was like a death tape. So he had Jim Robinson's death on there.
But didn't he have a heart attack in the kitchen, but actually fall into the lounge? Yeah, but didn't he actually moved across the set?
10 minutes. I think it took him 10 minutes. He pulled a tablecloth off with loads of fruit.
There was a lot going on there.
It was an amazing thing.
Poor you.
How did he know though? How did he know they were going to die?
Yeah.
Neighbours at 1 and again at 5:30.
Yes.
He knew.
Yes.
Simon had it
See, people complain
Simon was all over.
The people
He
complain
wasn't a mystic. He'd bloody seen the lunchtime.
Simon like that to everyone. I think Helen Daniels is going to pop it tonight.
See, people complain about the BBC schedules now, playing everything 3 or 4 times. But in them days, we lived off it.
Twice in 4 hours.
You can impress your friends by being at home for dinner.
Ahead of the game.
But I've got a feeling Helen Daniels is not looking good here, guys. I just got a bad feeling about it.
Selling spoilers in school.
Just there, yeah. You know what I think's going to happen tonight? Yeah. That's what it's like, yeah. Mrs.
Is there anything more depressing though than watching both editions of Neighbours in one day? I know it can't happen anymore, but there was nothing.
I'll tell you at 7:30 tomorrow.
Yeah. That was school holidays for me, though. That was my school holidays, was watching double Neighbours.
Fair play.
Double Neighbours.
Did you see the last one? I thought it was really disappointing.
That's why it was the last one.
Yeah, but I thought, I've not seen it for years, but I thought that I would go back and revisit it because it was one of those moments in television history, and I thought it was really boring. Nothing really happened.
Kylie was in it, though, right?
Yeah, but it was weird. She never really said anything. It was really odd. It was really strange.
Paul Robinson was it, but Madge, you've been in it back in it for years, hasn't he?
I have no idea.
Wasn't there the ghost of Madge? There was a ghost in it as well.
Yeah, I think she was in it. I was disappointed the Alessi twins weren't in it.
Yeah, they would have pulled people to the.
I was a big fan of the Udegawas as well, and they sadly never.
Yeah. Lassiter
was Stingy in it. Was
I just like Bouncer's Dream.
Remember Bouncer's Dream?
What a classic TV moment.
CBD oil.
CBD oil for dogs. It was. Bouncer just.
What a classic moment when the whole episode was about the dog's dream. That's tremendous.
You wouldn't let any standards, would you? It was not brave enough.
That was brave TV.
Yeah,
we'll do a dream about a dog.
Yeah, that was up there with Bobby Ewing come out the shower and
classic Dallas,
Brookside lesbian kisses and all the rest.
Classic TV.
Just don't get that kind of television
anymore.
It's
gone now, hasn't it? Barry Grant, remember coming back into Brookie and all that? That was amazing.
I don't know if you guys ever. You'll remember Brookside, but do you ever remember like Brookside After Dark where they sold like the VHSs? So. Yeah, like when VHSs become really, really obviously cheap, so they did like specials for them, and they had these like Brookside After Dark, and you'd have Jimmy Corkill like swearing in them because he could, but it was just the worst. It was just the worst example of like swearing.
It was gratuitous.
It was just ridiculous. It was
look, we can say.
Yeah, we can say this. Barry, and dickheads, like for no reason. It was absolutely brilliant.
But how good was like Sizzler and Sizzler?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember Sizzler? He's one of the gangsters.
Nobody remembers that.
And then Barry Grant come back and like he was the gangster one. You have to take this.
Did you run the Brookside fan club or something?
I was there. It was all over it. There was a time when Brookie was good.
Yeah.
And then it disappeared again.
Fair play.
You know.
I don't know how we got here, but we're here.
I know. Remember Jimmy Corkill locking his lad in the thing because he was cold turkey and all.
Going to cold
Incredible
turkey,
times. Trevor Jordash under the
We could just do a podcast where we talk about old stuff. Oh no, that's what Andy does.
Hey, talking of which, I have a question for Mr. Andy Bush and his radio station. And it is this, and I don't know whether this is something that you, Ped, or Baz have thought about before, but on Absolute Radio now, they have, is it 7 different stations?
7, yeah, 7.
But only 4 presenters.
Yeah, so
honest to God, it's like a round robin.
Here's what I don't understand. I
Spin
was
the
in the
wheel.
car the other day, and I was listening to you, and then I was flicking between Absolute 90s and Absolute, the ordinary one.
Yeah.
You know what
Absolute
I mean?
ordinary.
The regular one, right?
Yeah, absolutely ordinary, I believe.
Yeah. But I was looking between. Now, how on earth do you do a show where you as the presenters are doing your links, but then there's 7 different songs, so you don't know whether you're playing, My Sharona, or you're playing Ebenezer Good, or you're playing, how does that work?
Well, it's 9 different playlists with one show. So there's 9. When we press the button, 9 different songs from 9 different decades go out.
But how do you get the timing right? Because they're all slightly different, or do some go slightly faster and some go slightly slower, so that they all sort of end at the same time?
They handpick them and match them all up together. 60
clever.
songs are shorter, so you normally get 2 in the space that you would normally get one other song. So it's all hand matched by the computer. But as you rightly say, Dave, from a presenter's perspective, it's a context nightmare because you don't know what song's going to come off the back of what you're talking about. So you might be talking about, something, and then "Don't Stand So Close to Me" by the Police might come off the back of you talking, and it gives an unwanted context, shall we say?
Yeah,
so
sure.
it can be a nightmare. And also, you can't say this is way next.
Yeah.
No.
It depends what station you're listening to. So all your usual kind of gubbins of being able to just buy time when you're presenting a radio show are not there anymore. So.
But presumably, though, you will be listening to. So, are you listening to what you're playing on the regular
Absolute
station?
Ordinary. We
on Absolute Ordinary. Okay, you're listening to that, right?
Yeah.
And then that's your norm.
Yeah, that's it. So when it goes well, and it goes well most of the time, it's amazing. It's an amazing computer screen with like hundreds of different songs going out. But when it crashes, it absolutely screws up it's like an F1 car coming off the track. Everything goes wrong. Wheels come off it. Loads of songs all play at the same time. So when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's awful.
What a fascinating.
Much like Everton.
Yeah.
Much like Everton.
It's at the
Much
end
like
of the day,
Everton.
we've looked behind.
What an insight.
We've looked behind the curtain.
We have.
Don't stand so close to me. Could be when you've just finished talking about weed. People get couldn't it?
Yeah.
That would have worked. You see, would have filled in. But if it's
There you
something
go.
else,
Well, do you know what? Whenever something bad happens on the radio, they go through and they get rid of songs about, like dying or crash. There's so many bad things happening in the world that then they're very context sensitive.
Yeah,
so
they have like a protocol, don't they?
If you talk about, obviously, it's X amount of years to the day. Sadly, we lost Princess Diana, and then you play "Crash" by the Primitives off the back of it.
The
But that is
Primitives
really bad.
Primitives always
like
get
it,
pulled, don't they?
They always do. I feel bad for them. They're only getting
What an
royalties
absolute
constantly.
ordinary record.
I know, but this is it. So that's why context is everything, and it can be a nightmare if you don't know what the song is that follows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So there you go.
There you go.
What an
The
I mean,
insights.
it's good
What
to.
an insight,
It's good to see
It's
that
not
people
just
do
it's
plan
not just
shows.
people talking bollocks on the radio, is
No.
it? There's theory behind
That's
it.
what I'm
It's
saying.
mainly that, but
There's an actual plan. Which is
yeah,
science.
It's crazy.
We wouldn't know anything about that, but.
Speak for yourself. I used to when Dave was on the radio, I used to always wonder how he managed to talk all the way up to the lyrics of a song, and then when I got into radio, I found out the little tricks. I thought he was a magician, but I found out the tricks of it. I thought he knew every single song and how far into it the lyrics started. But then there's a timer on.
Not on my side of the desk. There wasn't.
Ah.
I genuinely,
So
I
he
didn't.
was
It
just
was
a
all
genius.
mine was all feel. I was very much analog in that respect.
There you go.
Just sensed it.
There you go.
He knows. He was in it.
Yeah.
Go back to footy for a minute. Obviously, that was that done. But Frank Lampard in his press conference was asked about. Obviously, we seen the Gurner getting sent off at the weekend for not being happy. But talked about pressure on managers and social media and radio. He referenced that he was listening to the radio. I'm quite sure it was one station. I won't say who it is.
Was it absolutely ordinary?
It might have been absolutely ordinary talking about
Absolute Deutschland.
managers getting sacked. But do you think, obviously both in the media, do you think that it is gone a little bit far where people discussing which manager's being sacked next is now we've gone too far across the line? So it's almost become a fascination, but that then brings pressure to whoever's doing the job. But I can remember whenever a new manager would get a job, it was almost like you pulled out a line which said, got to give him 18 months, let him get his own players in, let him get his pattern. When now it seems like 18 weeks is a luxury. So have we created a situation where there's a fascination on people losing their jobs?
Yeah, it's not healthy, is it? And the turnaround at the moment across every division within English football is absolutely ludicrous. I think there was a stat whereby we had Les Ferdinand on the official EFL podcast this week. Clang! And the stat was something like a quarter of the EFL managers have already been dismissed, at the stage where we are now, which is just, it's a ludicrous scenario. And it's just because obviously everybody wants instant success, and often this is driven by owners of football clubs who, with the greatest respect and a sweeping statement, sometimes they are not the best equipped to know what should and shouldn't be done in terms of the culture of the club and the culture of English football. And they think, right, well, I've put in this many millions of pounds to buy whatever club it is, and therefore why aren't we sitting in the top six?
Yeah.
But it is a ridiculous situation where, as you say, you're already sort of earmarking who might be next to go, and all we need is a few losses on the bounce, and suddenly Lampard's name will get mentioned as being in trouble, or so and so will be in trouble, and then sure enough they're gone. It must be a very difficult situation to work under.
Andy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in society in general, we're obsessed with people getting sacked, whether it's politics or football, or even, if you're a celebrity in the past or said something now that people don't agree with, then there's a pile on, they try and get you sacked or chucked out of whatever you're doing. So I think you're right, Baz. There is I think there is an obsession with getting people out of jobs and having vindication and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say, respect to Forest, because I 100% thought they were going to sack him.
Oh, so did I. I thought
they turned around and given him 5 years, which is great, because he's a great manager. Why you can't just keep firing managers? That's not the answer. That's not the answer to the problem, is it? We know that better than anyone.
Yeah,
we had this conversation yesterday, me and Pedden. Is that, and my personal view is that it's far too easy to blame the manager, and Everton have done that regularly, and since Mashiri took over, especially. The minute results don't start going your way, it's and I just feel like sometimes these players at these clubs just get off scot-free. Someone says something they don't really like, or your mate's getting dropped, and it's all of a sudden this fella doesn't know what he's on about, and they drop the standards. Then the new fella will come and he start winning. This fella's the best in the world, and then they don't like him because he drops one of them or whatever, and then it starts again. And I know it's easier to get rid of one fella than it is to get rid of 20, but you have to surely allow people to get on with the job. I'm not sure if you're getting beat 5-0 every single week, you can't stay, can you? Because at some stage you've got to say, well, it's not really working, mate, is it? You're the manager. We're getting battered every single week. There doesn't seem to be any improvement. I understand there's a need at times to change your manager, but I just feel like the media has cranked that right up. When I think back to the last 10 years of Everton managers, so I'm still got the end of David Moyes' time. Moyes had rocky spells as Everton manager. Everybody piled on him because he couldn't win at a top 4 club away, and yet we beat most of them at home under him.
See,
hang on, let me just finish. Then Martinez had 2 terrible seasons and survived. Went at the end, of his second bad season, his 3rd season, and yet at that time period it's got shorter now in the last.
Yeah, but I do think there's a couple of reasons for it. One being that the financial disparity between the Premier League and the Championship is just ridiculous. Like, it's far too big, and therefore managers in the Championship are under so much pressure to get into the Premier League, and
Yeah,
the managers in the Premier League are under ridiculous pressure. Because if Forest do fall out of the Premier League this season, financially they could be ruined.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
And that shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't be the same way.
Shouldn't have been allowed to spend money.
But the other side of it is, though, and I think this is where the football clubs fail massively, is I don't think they open up themselves enough for the media, and then the media start poking holes in everything they do because they don't have the answers to the questions they ask. I think football clubs are far too scared of the media. And this is a media, by the way, that pays their bills. It's kept Everton afloat for the last 25 years. So, and therefore...
And others.
Yeah, but I don't care about others.
Yeah.
I always say this when people say,
CBD
I don't care about other football clubs.
Yeah.
I care about my football club. It's kept Everton going for 25 years before Mashiri come in. And yet Everton have this like closed door policy. Oh, don't look behind the curtain. And it's like the reason Martin stayed for 2 extra years was because Martin was so good with the media that everyone liked him, and therefore he created this illusion that he was a brilliant guy, a brilliant manager, and no one wanted to see him sacked. Everyone in the media really liked him. You see this with people. It's why whether you think Harry Redknapp's a good manager or not, why he stuck around for so long, is because the media loved him. He was great. He was good.
He is a great fella.
Exactly, though. But he showed that. And he had he'd always open the door when, transfer deadline day. And football clubs are terrified of the media. And I think that's their fault. So they bring on that scrutiny, which shouldn't happen. Because if you go somewhere like America, the way we've seen it firsthand, they have an open door policy. Yeah. They're like, you pay our bill. Well, in fact, it comes from the league. The league are like, these people pay our bills. You speak to them, and if you don't, we fine you. And yet we have this thing in this country where if anyone asks Klopp the wrong question, it's how dare you? And it's like, shut up. You make for us, not the other way around, mate. And I think that has to change. And if it did, if you started giving the media a lot more access, the media would back off all that side of stuff. Personally, I think.
Because they'd have other stuff.
Because they'd have loads to talk about. It's like with the Arteta thing, with the Arsenal documentary on Amazon. For those few weeks that it was on, the media had loads to talk about in terms of Arteta, because they'd relate to things from the year before and go, saw you on the documentary talking about this. And even though it was a year old, they had something where they could go.
It's a reference point.
And there's not enough of that, because managers like, I don't want to talk about that. Like,
but they're also...
You should have to talk about it.
The football club protect them, don't they?
And they shouldn't.
We were in America. Sorry, Dave, you finished.
Sure.
You can come back in now. But we were in America, and we've seen the difference in what we do here, where it's really difficult to get to speak to people. And what you find is the people themselves want to talk. The people themselves want to come and talk to us. Yet the football club tries to keep them away. And when we went to America, we were in a different continent, and the rules were different. And in America, certainly the press guys we spoke to were like, come speak to whoever you want, go wherever you want, get as much information out there as what you want. And yeah, this country for me is miles behind in terms of that. You guys are in the media, what do you think?
I wanted to jump in and just, in terms of, I don't know, a lot of attention is put on managers, and obviously they talk about players playing for a certain manager. They talk about players not playing for a certain manager. Has he lost the dressing room, etc., etc. And a side's form and fortune can fluctuate hugely. However, ultimately, the question of win, lose, or draw on a Saturday afternoon or a bloody Sunday at 7 o'clock or whatever is ultimately down to that squad of players, right? And the application that they put in. Because the manager and the coaching staff can only do so much. And once they cross that line, then it's up to them. Now, herein lies the big problem in modern day football, is the fact that there's no real accountability and no real responsibility. And I know that that's a huge sweeping statement, and it's something that I do quite a lot. But this is a problem with the modern day footballer, is that when you're sitting on that salary and you're thinking, well, do you know what? I get it anyway, right? Whether he's the manager next week or the week after that or whatever, I'm only a year into a 4-year deal and I'm on 80 grand a week or whatever it is, or I'm on 180 grand a week or whatever, because quite frankly, he'll probably disappear and I'll get somebody else. I might play, I might not. Who cares? I still get paid, and also, even if I leave this club, because of who I am, I'll get picked up by somebody else and I'll probably double my money. So why do I give a fuck? Really?
That's the thing. We had the two boxers in last week who both won at the weekend. Jazz at Everton, who became world champion, and Peter McGrail won as well. But they were saying things, and it just come up in the conversation, and it was like, if we get injured, we don't get paid. That's it.
Absolutely.
We can't fight. We can't. And they were like, footballers get injuries, and we get paid for 4 years. And if you're like, legs a bit tight here, gaffer. We've seen it with Tosin.
Seen it with them.
It's like you're describing Jack Rodwell in the Sunderland Till I Die.
Yeah.
That just sat on the treatment bench taking a wage packet.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's it. I mean, things do have to change from that. We've seen it in. I think there was a documentary about Meatball Molly as well, and she was into she had like a 4-fight contract, and she was on the last one, and she knew if she didn't win it, she'd be out of UFC, the highest place, and she won it, and she put everything into it. And Dave's right, footballers have these cast iron contracts, which you're right, and they're not gonna, some weeks they'll be like, well, I don't really feel like it, or whatever. And I know that's not always. I know if they had to play, that wouldn't always be the answer, because you don't exactly know what's going on with footballers. But it does make it really far too easy for them. I don't like this fella, I'll just sit it out and wait for the next fella. And suddenly what you get is a situation, I think, which Everton have already experienced, by the way, which is where, because you have so many different managers, and I think this must happen in the Championship as well massively, you have so many different managers with so many different players, that how can a manager ever go in and enforce his will on a set of players that hardly any of them are his players?
Yeah,
I think Frank Lampard, what's been good with Frank is, I think he's got a set of players in really quickly, who are his players, and I think he did a podcast this week with Michael Calvin, and he said it was dead important. I got a couple of leaders in the dressing room, Tarkowski and Connor Cody, because I don't think he actually said this, but paraphrasing, they lay down the law essentially for everybody else,
and they're Frank's men,
and that's what Everton have been missing.
And sorry to jump in, but they are very much the exception to what I'm saying before.
Oh,
no, there are those characters, and when you get those good characters, they're worth their weight in gold. And I think in Connor Cody and in Tarkowski, you have those sort of rocks in the dressing room, but unfortunately, there's not enough of them. And there's too many people, in my opinion, and you were talking about Forest before, for example, who've signed so many players that should they go down, which is a possibility. I don't want them to, but they could go down. They could potentially face financial ruin because of the gamble financially that they have made in order to try and sustain their position in the Premier League. But it's the fact that the club could be facing ruin. The manager could be out on his arse. Yet these players have still got another 3 years to remain on their contract. So do you know what? I don't care whether we're playing whoever, because I still get paid.
That's exactly what.
But then we've got situations. Let me just. We've got situations where Forest have paid 40 million quid for Morgan Gibbs-White, and God knows what kind of contract they've offered them. And it's like that has to start.
No,
that has to stop.
Yeah,
that has to stop.
Being ridiculous, and there's been no thought process behind 15 of Forest's buys this summer. That there just hasn't. Well, I know we're coming towards the end now, but obviously we've talked about Newcastle. I think we all agree it's a very tricky game for Everton. But Saturday is Crystal Palace at home, which is again another difficult game. They're a big physical side. Patrick Vieira has got. We know what they're like. The famous Goodison night as it's become. We saw them at close quarters. They went 2-0 up. Andy, you'll be there, like you've just said. This is a game that Everton have got to win, isn't it? Regardless of what happens at St James's Park, Saturday surely is a game that we've got to be looking to take all the points from.
Well, yeah, I mean, as Dave said earlier on, I think we're going to lose to Newcastle as we normally do.
Narrowly, I think, by the way.
Narrowly, but then you're looking at, it's all narrative, isn't it? So suddenly it's, what would that be? 3 losses on the trot, and then suddenly you've got a bit of a nosedive going on, and Frank's the one that suddenly gets shifted under the spotlight instead of someone else. So I think it will be that game where we kind of get ourselves back on track. I always fancy us at Goodison, and maybe be looking for a bit of a reaction to not really kind of that second half against Spurs, where it didn't really happen for them at all. But it'd be interesting. I agree with what you're saying about Calvert-Lewin from earlier on as well, just in terms of the camera kept cutting to him sat there before he came on, and I don't know, it just didn't look like he fancied it in a kind of strange way. So I don't know whether he'll get more game time at the weekend, but be interesting to see how that develops as well. So I think we'll learn a lot about, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really feel like I know where we're at the moment. I can't quite tell, and only through getting more games under our belt, we're going to see what kind of team this is. It's encouraging, but I think the more we see of them, the more we'll know about it. And Palace is the perfect kind of game to kick on to a little spell where there's a few teams on the trot that we need to. If we're going to go back to my theory from earlier on about staying within touching distance of the bigger teams, but bravely losing and then trying to clean up on the smaller teams, then this is the beginning of a little sequence of teams that we need to be collecting points so that we can happily finish mid-table and not have to worry about it.
Dave, we've got 4 games after Newcastle. Palace at home, Fulham away, Leicester home, Bournemouth away. And someone asked us on one of the other shows we did, what's an acceptable points total for when we break for the World Cup. Everton are on 10, 2 points from trouble and 4 or 5 points from Europe, if that's the scale. But obviously for Everton, if Everton could get maybe 2 wins and 2 draws out of those 12 points and get 8 to 18,
I was going to say minimum
decent,
of 5 points for me.
Is it?
Yeah, I was going to say minimum of 5 points for me over those games that you've mentioned. Being a necessity rather than a desire. We've got to, because otherwise, you slip very quickly.
Yeah.
And your league position changes as much as it goes up quickly. It also comes down very quickly as well. And while you're sitting there in 11th or 12th and everything looks kind of respectable and rosy, and then before you know it, you're looking over your shoulder again, as we know to our fear last season.
Yeah.
And we cannot let that happen. And we've got to try and make sure that we are in charge of our own destiny, in so much as not allowing ourselves to get sucked that far down like we did last season, where it was really, really scary. Ironically, it was a Palace game as well, that was the turning point. But we've got to put these games away. And while I don't think that we get anything at St James's tomorrow, I think it'll be a good game, but I don't think we get anything there. I think we narrowly lose that. But Palace, we have to win. To set ourselves up for Fulham away, which I also think we win if we beat Palace.
Okay, Ped, just finally, 4 games.
I think we have to get around 18 points to be on about 18 points when the break comes. And we've got to, there has to be a shift in terms of when we do play the Palaces, the Leicesters, Fulhams of the world. There has to be a shift where you can noticeably see the difference going forward. I appreciate Spurs away isn't always going to be the great example of your how good you are attacking, but I think that has to come out. Otherwise, because if it doesn't, genuinely we are in trouble. I know people are sort of very happy with the situation at the moment in one way, in respects of we look better, but if you can't put the ball in the net, then you've got problems.
Bite you, isn't it?
You've got problems. So Newcastle will be a difficult game. I think we can.
Not Man City though.
I think we can get something. And but Palace then has to realistically be 3 points. But it just feels like every game's going to be a little bit of a slog, and that's where I think the frustration comes from. Is that you look at every game and you don't think that's a given, that's a given. And as I said, if we can get maybe up to like 18 points while we go for the break, then I think everything will look a little bit respectable. We get back, have more players fit, and then we've got the January transfer window where hopefully we do some business. Because if we don't,
then we could.
Then we've made a mess of it personally.
Absolutely right. That's it for us. Big thanks again to the lads. Any questions you've got for next week's pod? Random ones, put them in and we'll take them out and use them for next week as well. But big thanks to the lads. Big thanks for watching. See you later.